In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to again send His greatest peace and blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, the Commander of the Faithful, the Prince of the Believers, the Protector of the Prophet and his message, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, my dear respected brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We would like to first thank you all for making it here tonight before Iftar as we try to continue on our journey in this holy month, directing ourselves, directing our attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we try to bolster the relationship that we have with our Master, with our Creator, in light of the great mercy that we are blessed with in these holy nights. Now last night, we had a presentation to establish the foundation for tonight and the next few nights, where we will be talking about ethics, akhlaq, and how we can work on ourselves, how we can work to better our personal akhlaq so that would translate into a better behavior, where we could bolster the virtues that we have, work on improving the virtues that we have, and also at the same time try to remove the vices that we have. So Jalal, in the next few days we will be talking about some of the factors that influence our akhlaq. Could you introduce that before we actually go into the different factors?
So, like the Sayyid said, we brought forward this idea of ethics. And yesterday we talked about the introduction of what our purpose was, and thinking about ethics as a tool, a mechanism for us to achieve our purpose. Now, about the factors that the Sayyid is talking about, essentially there are a number of factors that influence our ethics, our akhlaq, as we are as individuals. So there are a number of things that affect the way we interact with one another, the way we look at ourselves, and the way we conduct ourselves and our behavior, whether it be just between people, ourselves, or even our perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His mercy and His blessings upon us. So the first factor, we're just going to get straight into it, that is part of the series of factors, and there are a total of 7 that we're going to be covering between tonight and tomorrow night. The first factor is our family and our genes. Now, some of us might think that, this whole idea of genes, what do you mean? How is genes and your family going to affect your akhlaq, your ethics? Because essentially when we're looking at ethics, we're looking at behavior and conduct, right? So we're going to jump right into that with regards to our family and genes. Now say, what do we mean here when we're talking about introducing this factor of family and genes?
So Jalal, the first factor which we are talking about right now is family, and what we're saying here is that our families and the way we are raised and the way we grow up and what we learn at a very young age shapes and formulates our ethics, our behavior. Imam Ali alayhi salam has a beautiful narration where he says that al-ilm fi al-sighar kal-naqsh fi al-hajar, where he says that learning at a young age or knowledge at a young age is like etching in a stone. What does he mean by that, Jalal?
So the Imam is introducing this hadith to us, and we put this here at the very beginning so we can realize the importance of actions, behaviors, habits established at a young age. So whether we're really young, or we are parents or older siblings, right? We're looking at the different actions and behaviors and habits that we can instill in our youth at that young age. Now, it doesn't mean that we're talking about, when we're saying young age, you're thinking of maybe 8, 9, 10 and older. We're talking about at 1 and 2. Because when you're playing with your child, what kind of games that you're playing with your child. And if you look at psychology and the research and statistics brought forward by psychologists, they tell you that giving these kind of habits from a very young age, so much so that even influencing the behavior of the child comes forward even at the age before birth, so before age, in the womb. When the mother is pregnant, what kind of things is she listening to? What kind of atmospheres is she in? Is she listening? Is she in a stressful environment that also causes stress on the child? Different factors play into the growth and development of the child at a very, very young age. So imagine if in the womb the child is being affected. Imagine at the age of 2 and 3 how much this child will be affected. Now, when we're saying this, a lot of times we think, well, if the child is that young, they're not completely understanding everything that's being said. How are you saying that there's an actual influence?
That influence is there. And the Immaculate alayhi salam, whether it's Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or the Imams alayhi salam, so our own religion, Islam, or even psychology, or even other disciplines, tell us that kids at a very young age, in fact, even before they are born, as Jalal mentioned, when they are in the mother's womb, they are impacted and influenced by the environment that they are in. That's why, for example, it's very recommended by our Imams that when a mother is pregnant, that she is aware and conscious of everything that she does. And if she's able and capable, that she tries to always remain in a state of wudu, or she recites Quran, or she recites dua, or she recites tasbih, because that will all have an everlasting impact on the child. Now, that's in the mother's womb. And then even beyond, as Imam Ali alayhi salam says, that when you teach a child at a very young age, whatever you teach that child, whether you're teaching them certain behaviors that they should adopt, certain habits, certain things, that will have an everlasting impact. It's going to be with them for the rest of their life. That's why as parents, when we're dealing with our children, we have to embrace that. And we have to also take a responsibility and be accountable by first making sure that whatever environments we put our kids in, that they're good environments that will positively contribute to their growth. Otherwise, if it's detrimental, then that's going to stay with them, and that's going to be something that we will be accountable for. So Jalal, that's the first part, which is the family. Now very quickly, before we move on to the next factor, how does genes play into this?
And with that one, when we were actually doing our research and we were doing the reading and looking at the book of Sheikh Makarim al-Shirazi and his book of Al-Akhlaq fi al-Quran, he talks about this idea of genes and how genes actually affect the tendencies that we have towards certain actions and certain behaviors. So the Sheikh goes into it and he explains how the actions and behaviors and habits of the mother and father will create an increase or decrease in certain tendencies for the child. So based on your genes, based on who your parents are, you have more of a tendency to act and behave in a certain way, right? I remember as a child, as I was growing up, and I would do something that my father was particularly proud of, my dad would say, Ibn Abu, right? So the son of his father. In that tendency, showing that innately you have that relationship that, yes, the action that's being done is a result from the parent, right? There's that direct relationship back. And it's not only in the way the parent teaches, like what we said earlier with regards to the family, but also in just the innate genes, as in your attachment being part of that bloodline. So this is emphasizing the importance of when you, let's say you are a parent now, all right? Or you're about to become a parent, or for the younger crowd, one day you will be parents. Think about the actions that you do today, and the things that you do today will actually affect your kids. Because you're going to actually increase the tendency that they have towards certain actions. So if you have a problem with your anger, if you have a problem with patience, know that that's actually going to increase the tendency for your child when they actually grow up, as a young man or a young girl growing up. Now, Sayyid, I have a question for you. We have this tendency, right? But does this tendency mean that the responsibility is solely on my parents? So whatever I do is a result from them. This tendency that I have, is it a result from my parents? So if I have a problem with my anger, it's because my mom has a problem with anger, or my dad has a problem with anger. Or I'm impatient because of my parents. You did this to me, right? It's your fault. Can we say that?
We can't say that as boldly as you are saying it, Jalal. And the reason why is because there are factors that influence ethics and behavior. And this is why we're holding this discussion. Based on what Jalal is saying, or the statement that some people might say, which is that they blame every vice that they have on their parents, and then on the flip side, if there's anything good in them, they say, this is me, I did this, I'm proud of this. If someone says that, then they're limiting the influence and effect of ethics to just that one particular factor. But here there's multiple factors. And when we continue and talk about the other factors, then we could answer Jalal's question more precisely, which is that what shapes behavior, good and bad, virtues and vices, good habits and bad habits, is a group, a number of factors. And it's imperative that we are conscious and aware of all of these factors, because once we're aware and learn about them, then we could try to utilize them in the best possible way to try to improve and enhance our ethics. Now the next factor, Jalal, let's get right to the next factor, because the next factor plays a very key role in shaping our behavior, which is the environment that we are in. Let's think about this for a second. The environment that we are in contributes to the ethics that we have. The virtues that I have, the good things that I have, the good qualities that I have, and also the bad qualities that I have. Now, Jalal, is there anything in the Holy Quran that can illustrate that for us?
There's a particular verse that we came across in Surah Al-A'raf, verse 138. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I'm going to recite the Arabic quickly, and then we'll go into the English translation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وجاوزنا ببني إسرائيل البحر فآتوا على قوم يعكفون على أصنام لهم قالوا يا موسى اجعل لنا إلها كما لهم إلهة قال إنكم قوم تجهلون.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, and listen to this beautiful verse. We carried the children of Israel across the sea. Then they came upon a people who kept to the worship of certain idols that they had. They said, O Moses, make for us a god like the gods that they have. He said, you are indeed ignorant. So Jalal, here we have a prophet of God. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, who is one of the Immaculates, he is perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as a messenger. And he has a group of people with him. And they're telling him, they're asking him if they could, or if he can help them, or get them an idol that they can worship. How can that come about when they know or should know better that with a prophet of God, that's not the way to go?
Now, when we were reading this, we kind of felt like, wow, it's pretty interesting. You have the prophet of God before you, and he's telling you, of course, there's one God, the one and only, you worship him and no one else. And then they look around and they see a bunch of other people worshiping idols, and they're like, hey, Musa, can you get us a couple idols? This looks cool. Can you help us with that? What did I just finish telling you? Now, I want to also emphasize real quick, regarding the story, it shows us how important, how significant our environment is. The people around us, the things that we are used to doing, and the people that we see doing different activities around us, the places we're at, are going to affect the way we act. Now imagine the prophet is with us, before us, in our time, and we tell him, well, can we do something else? I mean, you said, yeah, there's one God, but we just want to worship like a nice statue. This flower, this vase looks pretty cool. I saw a bunch of people like bowing down before it. Can you get me one of those? And by the way, also, when we refer to, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Bani Israel, the children of Israel. I remember when I was younger, I read it and I was like, children of Israel? what? Israel. And I asked them, like, Israel as in the state of Israel? And like, no, this is not the state of Israel. These are not the children of the modern day Israel. This is Israel as in it was a name, one of the names of our Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. So just a quick clarification, because I remember also a few younger brothers and sisters, they came to me like, I keep on seeing the word Israel in the Quran, what's going on? Right? So I asked, that is the one of the names, one of the titles of Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam.
And there's a lot of emphasis on the environment that we put ourselves in. It's so significant that we have a beautiful narration by the Prophet where he says, one who runs away from land to land for his religion. So someone that leaves his homeland or wherever he's residing and goes to another land because he wants to preserve, protect, and maintain his religion, even if it's only a shibr, which is even if you're moving across a very small piece of property, then that person must go to heaven. The Prophet is saying that that person who leaves from one place to another, because he's moving to protect and preserve his religion, then he deserves heaven. And he will be in the company of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now Jalal, does this strike any contemporary examples that we might have or maybe our parents have?
I can think of one primary place, and that's a place called Dearborn, Michigan. A lot of people have moved to Dearborn, Michigan, and I'm not talking about in the 60s and 70s where people were coming for Ford Motor Company and coming to work, or even before that. I'm talking about a lot of communities, and the Sayyid can testify to this, I can testify to this. In visiting different communities across the states, different Muslim communities, you find so many people contemplating about the idea of going to move to Southeast Michigan, going to move to Dearborn, right? And Dearborn Heights, right? It's okay, Dearborn Heights. I live in Dearborn Heights, right? Why? Because of the sense of community that exists in Dearborn, this Muslim community. Now, for those of us who have lived here all our lives, we kind of take it for granted. And sometimes we even say, man, I can't wait to get out of Dearborn. I can't wait to leave Dearborn. Man, I'm so sick of Dearborn, right? But if we look at the different examples and the different factors that are involved in regards to this idea of environment, you see so many advantages, so many benefits of being in this community. Sayyid, I'm sure you have a couple examples that you can mention from things that you saw.
A very simple one that probably strikes a nerve with all of us, especially right now when we're fasting, is halal food. We take it for granted in Dearborn. We're really spoiled in Dearborn when we talk about food. When you go outside of Dearborn, and probably many of you have probably been to other communities, other places, maybe on vacation, or for some of the older ones on a professional business trip, you realize that in a lot of places it's hard to find halal food. I recall a trip that I had about a year and a half ago to Florida, where for about 5 days I lived on Subway and Domino's Pizza. And I thought to myself at that point, maybe if I was on a diet, it would have been a lot more useful. Now that's just a very simple example. We might think to ourselves, halal food. But there's probably more to, especially to the hadith that the Prophet is talking about in terms of when someone moves from one land to another to preserve their religion. What is meant by preserving their religion?
So this idea of preserving your religion, it's essentially, and you'll hear this in a number of different narrations, a number of different discussions about person's fear over the religion, right? And preserving that religion. Because you're in essence afraid to go forward in making any mistakes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That consciousness is there. The consciousness that we talked about from the first day is that we do not want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be upset or displeased with us. A person making a move in their life, making a decision based on that principle, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that this person is going to be in heaven with me and the Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ. Now, we might think of different situations where, yeah, I'm going to go move to New York, I'm going to move to DC, I'm going to move to Florida because the weather's nice, or because business is there. especially during 08, 09, I remember a bunch of people that I knew moved down south because, in states like Arizona and Texas, because business was booming down there. And it wasn't so friendly, business wasn't so friendly to people up in Michigan and other states, right? Making that move based on that gain that you're gonna have from your business. So let's say you got accepted into a really great school, right? A really great university. And you make that move to another state, to another country even, based on that benefit that you're getting, right? You're seeing that benefit from you. Imagine making a move simply because you know that in this country, in this state, in this place, I'm gonna be able to practice my religion more freely. Now this is something that we also take for granted, not only in Dearborn, Michigan, but also being in the United States. And this is not a patriotic speech for you, but in the essence that if you go to other countries around the world, you simply being a person who says, I am Muslim, you will be persecuted. You will be discriminated against. You simply saying that I'm a lover of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, I love Ahlul Bayt, you will be persecuted. You will be discriminated against. You might even be killed. So when we're talking about this idea of preserving our religion and making that move to any place where we know our Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, we're going to follow you and we're going to make that move to a place just because of that principle. That is something that is huge, something that is great, something that is big. So showing us the importance of where we're placing ourselves in a certain environment for which reason.
Now, alhamdulillah, many of us are probably saying right now, we are living freely, we're able to express our religion, we're not under any form of oppression or persecution. We live in Dearborn, where if you want to live in an ideal or a community where there's Muslims and there's a large Muslim community, then it doesn't get better than Dearborn. But then the next question is, how does this whole issue of atmosphere and environment affect my ethics? And beyond that point, even what's more practical is the everyday atmosphere that we put ourselves in, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in the car, what we listen to, what we hear, what we watch, what we observe, the talks, the discussions that we have with people. That environment in its entirety has an influence on our behavior. And I'll mention a very quick example. Especially when I was younger and before driving and being able to drive a car, a lot of times you carpool with other people, either your friends or maybe parents of your friends. And if you're someone that doesn't like to listen to music, doesn't want to listen to music, and you're not comfortable listening to music for whatever reason, and you're in a car where music is blasted, everyone else is enjoying it and having a good time, then you are going to be very hesitant and reluctant to say anything or do anything to try to stop that music. So you're driving along with your friends, they have music on, they like it, they're enjoying it, you're the only one that's not comfortable, but because you're the only one in that situation and the environment is supporting and promoting that action, then you're not going to be very able and capable to voice your opinion and say, this is not the right thing to do. Is there another example, Jalal, that you could personally think of where the environment that you're in really influences your behavior?
So this is, the one I have in mind is a little different than Sayyid's. And Sayyid's actually goes into a segue of going into friendship, which is actually its own factor outlined, inshallah, that we're going to cover, and that's the last factor we're going to cover for tonight, inshallah. The one I was thinking about was things as simple as movies, right? Things as simple as, you on your own, if you're listening to certain things, whether it be something that is halal for you to listen to, something that's recommended for you to listen to, or something that's haram for you to listen to, right? I remember, actually, this wasn't too long ago, and we were talking about this right before we came here. Yesterday, Sayyid and I were both attending a lecture, and we wanted to, inshallah, also get some benefit. So we try to do our own research and come and bring these presentations to discuss with everyone here, and inshallah provide an environment where we're benefiting. Also, we'd like to benefit in our own way by attending lectures as well. So yesterday we were attending a lecture, and the lecturer, the respected Sayyid, he said something really motivational, and he was talking about taqwa, right? And he got into a point where he said, let it go, let it go. What's the first thing that you thought about right now? Frozen, right? And that popped in my mind because I remember watching it with my niece, right? And I remember watching that movie with my niece, and that popped in my head, right? And I thought to myself, wow, subhanAllah, really? And then I heard a bunch of kids behind me singing, let it go. And I thought to myself, wow, this is such an amazing example of what we have for tomorrow. Showing you that the things that you expose yourself to, whether it be a movie, a song, a certain cafe that you go to, whatever it is, a restaurant you go to, whatever it is, it's going to affect you in a certain way. And then when certain things pop up, for example, if you're listening to a certain song, right? And we all know that there are certain songs, certain music that are haram, that are forbidden for us, we shouldn't listen to them, right? And the jurisprudence we can talk about on another day. But we know there's certain things we can listen to, certain things we can't listen to. Imagine how influential certain songs are, actually all songs, especially with their rhythm and their melody. That anytime someone says one word, let it go, you suddenly remember it and you start singing it. Who's in control? Who's in control? Who's deciding your actions? Who's making the decisions for you? Or are you on autopilot and just letting things happen for you? I remember one time when I was actually having a discussion with one of my mentors, and they told me who's in control. It took me back so far, and I said to myself, wow, I'm going to let something like a song control me. Think to yourself, without this whole idea, without, of course, we need to follow our jurisprudence 100%. This is the laws of God. But just take this at a very practical level. If you're going to let a song that someone wrote that has nothing to do with you and your life control you, something's up.
صلى على محمد وعلى محمد. So to bring this all together, here we're talking about the different factors that affect our ethics. Because in essence, what we're trying to do in these holy nights is to become better people, to develop better qualities, to remove the bad habits, the bad vices that we have. And we said so far, we mentioned two factors. The first factor was family and genes. The second factor being the environment and atmosphere that we're in. Now we're going to segue into the last factor, which is very, very important. And it can be a lecture, in fact, lectures in itself, which is the influence of friends and acquaintances on you. So just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the environment and atmosphere that you're in. That dictates a lot of ways in which you act and what you do. Now, in the environments and atmospheres that we're in, probably the most important element in that is the people that are there. And that could be your family members, that could be your coworkers, that could be your colleagues in school, and it could also be the people that you call or define as your friends. The people that you like to hang out with, the people that you like to spend time with. So Jalal talking about the impact of friends and acquaintances on you, on your ethics, on your behavior.
I believe we mentioned this in a previous night. And this, I believe, it sums it up for you like no other words. And these are usually the characteristics of the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, قُلْ لِي مَنْ تُعَاشِرْ أَقُلْ لَكَ مَنْ أَنْتِ. Tell me who you befriend, I'll tell you who you are. Now, take a second to just think about that. Now, many of you might have come here with your friends or family, right? And you spend time with that friend or that family member. That person that you're sitting next to, and I see my cousins right there, and I take this as actually a very beautiful lesson for me. With my cousins, I see them always with each other. And I see them as a reflection of one another. If you look at your family members, some of your family members might be your very best friends. And it might be decisively so. That you spend time with certain family members because you know that this is a person you can trust and confide in and spend time with, and you're going to be protected by. that you share the same principles, share the same virtues, right? And you can be in a state where I know I can move forward in my life and they got my back. Think to yourself about the people that you spend time with. And Sayyida and I were talking about this before, and we were mentioning a discussion that we've had previously with other people, especially with some of our old friends, that we've seen kind of go in a direction that isn't the best direction for them. And the excuse is, no, that person doesn't affect me. That person doesn't do anything to me. I'm my own person. Even if I have a friend that does things that I don't approve of, it's not a big deal, right? I'm my own person. I do my own thing, right? Speaking with that confidence, with that personality, with that pizzazz. Right? We don't say pizzazz anymore, right? So say, what do we say to those people? What do we say to ourselves when we think that way? We have that friend that we really like to spend time with because why do you like spending time with them? They're fun. Or they're funny. Right? But they're not the best person to be around because you know there's certain things that they do that they're going to rub off on you. Are we really affected all the time by everything that's done around us?
And I think, Jalal, what you're talking about right now and how many of us might say that our friends don't influence us or our friends don't affect us, I think this is probably something that we all thought or said at one point or another, including myself first and foremost, especially when I was younger. And a reply and answer to that can come directly from the words of our Immaculates. We have a beautiful narration. And pay attention to this because it directly answers Jalal's question. I don't even have to answer it. These words really do justice to this whole idea of, do our friends influence us? The Imam says that hanging out with the evildoers makes you gain evil, similar to the wind when it flows over something that smells bad, it carries that smell. Now think about that for a second. We've all been in situations where we're sitting outside in our backyards, we're just talking, and then we have this smell that just comes across and slaps us on the face, and you smell barbecue, and you're just thinking to yourself, you know, smells great, I want that barbecue. That analogy that the Imam is drawing here, how the wind picks up that bad smell and transports it, is how our friends can have an influence on us. When they do bad, when they do evil, that impacts us. Now, Jalal, we were talking about that earlier. And we focused on the whole word of evildoer. And we said that the Imam here is referring to the evildoers. Now, what is the scope of that evildoer? Is it the murderer? Is it the drug dealer? Or something else?
And this is usually the kind of reaction that we have when we hear evil, right? You imagine the villain in the cartoons that we used to watch as kids, right? Evil. The evildoer, right? The villain. The Imam alayhi salam here is telling us, and take it for its plain text value, right? And take it so you can practically apply it into your own life. The evil is anything that displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The evil is anything that goes against the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, goes against the spirit of the goodness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us in this world, right? Anything that goes against that, anything that goes against God is evil. And guess what? Yes, many of us do evil. We do bad things. Now, you might get offended. Me? Evil? Me? Do bad things? I'm a saint. What are you talking about? But really, when it comes down to the fact of the matter, we need to be real with ourselves. We need to be practical. We need to see where we're at. If I'm doing things I shouldn't be doing, yes, it's an evil. Face it. Someone might come across and say, well, it's okay if I listen to this kind of music because it doesn't make me think bad thoughts. Brother, sister, it's haram. It's okay if I go and watch this movie because, you know, I'm mature enough. I'm 18. It's haram. It's wrong. You're exposing yourself to this material. You're exposing yourself to these videos, to this kind of music, to these kind of people, to these kind of atmospheres. It's okay if I go to the hookah lounge because smoking isn't haram. Well, smoke your lungs out. and see what it's going to do to your health, and then go back to the fatwa and see, yes, actually, if you know it's going to be harmful for you and detrimental to your health, it becomes haram. It's okay if we're just a bunch of guys or we're just a bunch of girls. But you know when you're walking along and someone gives you that smile, or someone gives you that comment, someone shoots you that text message, hey, where are you? What are you up to? All of these things have a chain of effect. All of these things are going to influence what kind of person you are. This goes all the way back to the environment that we're talking about. And yes, that evil doing, it's a reality. But how are we going to move ourselves away from that? And when the Imam is telling us about that evil doer, let's start with ourselves. Anything that we say that we're doing, we see in ourselves, we reflect, we become conscientious that we're doing in ourselves first and foremost, then go on to see, yes, I need to kind of clarify who are my friends, who are the good people I need to stay around, and the bad people that I need to stay away from. And we were talking about this earlier, we were saying, people get into like a cleansing mode, where, evildoer, I gotta stay away from all these bad people, right? And they start Xing and judging everybody. Bad, 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 evil, villain, right? Without looking at ourselves. And essentially, that's where we need to start.
And that last point is very important, and we'll conclude with it, which is in all of this, we are not in a position to judge anyone. Before we judge anyone, let's judge ourselves. Let's work on ourselves. Before we point the finger on someone else and say, you're doing a bad thing, you're a villain, you're an evildoer, you're doing wrong, let's reflect on ourselves and fix our shortcomings and our imperfections. So this is not about judging other people and stamping the people with approval or disapproval. But rather what this is all about is trying to put yourself in the best situation possible, in the best environment possible, with the best people that could help you develop and that you could help develop. Because a true friendship is one that benefits both sides. You should be benefiting, you should be getting something out of it, and also the other person should be getting something out of it. Now, spending time with them and having fun and relaxing is fine, and at times it could be a good thing if it's done in the proper way. But that shouldn't confine and limit the relationship, the friendship. Because when we do that, then we're really selling our friendship very cheap. Let's use our friends in a positive way. Let's work with our friends in a positive way so that we could become collectively and jointly better people, better individuals on all levels, whether it's in our religion, in our faith, in our school, in our careers. Then when we do that, then we're really doing justice to that friendship. Then we're really putting that friendship at a high level, and we're getting something out of it, and we're giving something towards it. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we'll stop here with the factors, and inshallah we'll pick up tomorrow with 4 more factors that can affect and impact and influence our behavior. But for today, let's contemplate and reflect once we leave about the factors that we talked about, which is our family, our environments and atmospheres, and also, most importantly, the friends and people we're around. And let's try to reflect and see what environments and atmospheres we're putting ourselves in, what environments and atmospheres are we putting our kids in. Who are we hanging out with? Who are we allowing our kids to hang out with? Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we said in these nights, we want to reflect, and the best form of reflection and contemplation is by mentioning the words of the Immaculates, the Prophet, and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So we'll continue with a few more verses from the great dua Abi Hamza al-Thimali, which is highly recommended during the nights of Shahr Ramadan al-Mubarak. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. والحمد لله الذي أناديه كلما شئت لحاجتي.
And all praise is for Allah, whom I call upon with my needs whenever I wish.
وأخلو به حيث شئت لسري بغير شفيع فيقضي لي حاجتي.
And I entrust in him with my secrets without an intercessor, and he grants me my wishes.
الحمد لله الذي لا أدعو غيره ولو دعوت غيره لم يستجب لي دعائي.
All praises for Allah, whom I do not plead to anyone but him. I do not plead to anyone but him, for if I were to plead to others, they would not grant me.
والحمد لله الذي لا أرجو غيره ولو رجوت غيره لأخلف رجائي.
And all praises for Allah, whom I do not seek anyone but him, for if I were to seek anyone but him, they would turn me away.
والحمد لله الذي وكلني إليه فأكرمني ولم يكلني إلى الناس فيهينوني.
And all praises for Allah, who dignified me by becoming the disposer of my affairs, instead of making me rely on others who would then humiliate me.
والحمد لله الذي تحبب إلي وهو غني عني.
And all praises for Allah, who endeared me, even though he is not in need of me.
والحمد لله الذي يحلم عني حتى كأني لا ذنب لي.
And all praises to Allah, who treats me with such kindness, just as if I had no sin.
Dear brothers and sisters, we'll conclude by remembering our beloved Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam, who is insha'Allah our source of inspiration and motivation, and insha'Allah with his prayers for us and his blessings we could continue on this journey. So if we could all stand up and direct ourselves towards the Qibla.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. In the last of our prayers, and Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.